What's going on, guys? I'm Jody. This is Inspire Woodcraft. Today I want to show you how I rip thin material on the table saw, and not just rip, but even crosscut thin material on the table saw. So what I have today is I've ripped some thin 16th inch or so strips of poplar off this piece here, and I'm going to use it for edge banding. So the plywood that I'm covering up is this 3/4 inch plywood for a cabinet, and the edge banding itself is 3/4 of an inch. It's just a little bit wider than the thin 3/4 inch of the plywood here. So when I install this onto here, it's actually going to overhang by just a little bit. Now with thinner traditional edge banding, it's thin enough you can cut it with a razor blade, or they actually make tools with razor blades in them, so it'll slice both edges and flush that up. On something like this, I would have to get like a block plane, or I would have to get a chisel and very carefully with the grain, flush that stuff back up. I don't want to do that. And the other thing is because somebody's gonna say something, the quote right thing would have been to probably mill the poplar down first to the thickness of the plywood that I'm trying to cover up. But I don't want to waste all this poplar just because I need a couple of strips. So in this case, I want to take this, cut it to the thickness that I want, then lay it down and cut it even thinner. The problem is with thin stock, a lot of times it gets caught underneath the fence where the fence meets the table. And inherently, the fence on a table saw will float above the tabletop to a certain degree. So today I have 3 different ways that you can go about preventing that. Now before I get into that, I do want to say, a few videos ago I uploaded a video about my 3 favorite ways to use CA glue in the shop. There was a contest included in that video. All you had to do was watch the video and leave a comment, and that was your entry in receiving a care package from STARBOND that has thick, medium, thin CA glues in a clear, and a bottle of ACCELERATOR. Since uploading that video, STARBOND has said they actually want to deliver 3 packages. So there'll be 3 winners in that video, and unlike what I said in the video, the contest is actually going to be open to US and Canadian residents both. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it somewhere in the description, and go check that video out, leave a comment, and make sure you enter to win, because now there's going to be 3 winners. And if you happen to be Canadian and you watched that video and you didn't leave a comment because you thought you weren't going to be able to win, well, now's your chance. So go check that video out, leave a comment, and hopefully you'll win something. Now, as far as cutting thin stuff on the table saw goes, I'm going to start with one that's a little so-so, but it does work in certain situations. And I got this from when I was a plastic fabricator. We would take a thin piece of acrylic and we would put a block at the end of it, and that piece would live up here on the fence of the table saw. When we had a wider piece, say a big full sheet that we wanted to break down, and we had really thin stock that would sometimes sneak underneath the fence here, all we had to do is just take this, not this, lay it down here. The little block would be underneath here and it would get stuck right here. So the momentum from pushing the piece through the table saw would keep this down, and it would float up here, so it would keep the piece itself from going underneath the fence. Now I would say this would work best on wider pieces. So if you had a big full sheet, you're trying to break it down into smaller pieces and you keep kind of getting the corner stuck in here or something, this would be definitely a way to go. But I would use a very thin material, an 1/8 inch acrylic or better would be probably the way to go. In the shop where we have plywoods and stuff that are more rigid, I wouldn't use this necessarily in my shop. Not because I don't believe in it, I know for a fact that it works, but I'm not cutting thin stuff that wide very often. So for me, I'm probably not gonna go this route. The other thing about this is that the narrower you are, the more you're gonna cut at an angle. So if you're cutting thinner stuff like this, I wouldn't use this. The whole idea is that with the thin enough sheet, it's going to relax and land back on the table and cut flat on the table. If you're up like this, and I have this piece here, I'm gonna end up cutting this at an angle because this edge is raised up. So that's one of those ones that you kind of use at your discretion, but it definitely does work. Now the second one, and one that I really like, and you guys have probably seen me do that in some of my other videos, is actually to use double-sided tape. And I would take a strip like this, a thin plywood, I would cut it the length of my fence, most likely, and then the height of my fence. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just putting a false face on here. I'm gonna take some double-sided tape, I'm gonna stick it to this, and what I'm gonna do before I put it down is I'm actually gonna lay down a business card first, so that I do have a slight gap underneath there, because if you don't and you let this suck all the way down to the table, when you go to raise this up and move it back and forth, it's gonna drag on the table itself, especially if you have separate panels, and those panels are never actually 100% lined up together. And so this is gonna drag on there, and you're just gonna fight with it more than anything. So if you leave a piece of paper, a business card or something underneath there, double stick tape this to there, and now your thin strips will not get underneath there and cause you problems. Now the third one, and the one that I'm probably gonna do for this project, is actually to take a piece of plywood like this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna raise my blade up. I'm going to set the distance between my blade and my fence to the thickness of the material that I wanna cut. So then I'm gonna close that all up. I'm actually gonna take this piece of plywood, I'm gonna run it through the saw about, say, halfway, whatever I feel comfortable with, turn my blade off, I'm gonna pull this piece out, double side tape this to the table right back where it was to begin with, and now I have a zero clearance insert, and I can't get any thin pieces underneath here because it's completely closed off. And now I can use something like what I would recommend, the gripper. This is really good for pushing those thin pieces through there without getting close to the blade, without destroying your other push sticks. This will straddle the blade and you can slide this right on in there. So now I'll have perfect pieces that are cut the width that I need, and I can continue on with my project. Now I'll leave links for all this stuff down in the description, just like always, so if you guys are interested, you guys can check those out. But other than that, if I didn't explain something all the way, definitely let me know down in the comments. That's all I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for watching this video as always. We'll see you guys in the next one.